Coming up on this episode of the Soul Twin Stars podcast.
All of a sudden, the top drawer of the piece of furniture comes shooting out across into the middle of the living room.
That they were giant rays that lit up the entire room. And I said, oh my God, the lights. Holy crap, the lights.
After you take the EVPs in the video and you watch through all the evidence, it's surprising how much you actually catch without even knowing it.
We heard 5 little footsteps running, toot, 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 toot. And we're like, we all got chills. We knew someone was in the room with us.
Aliens were lifting me up with no effort, as if I was levitating.
Hi, I'm Lady Shadowe, a witch with much to share, stirring the cauldron with magical self-care.
Hi, I'm Peaceful Nick, a medium divine. I chat with the dead and interpret every sign.
We are Soul Twin Stars, best friends through it all.
From spells to healing, we're answering the call.
From moon cycles to menopause and making peace with the dead.
We aren't afraid to talk about what's rarely said.
So tune in each week to get raw, real, and wise.
Let's talk about a spiritual life with absolutely no disguise. Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast, uninhibited spirituality. Peaceful Nick and Lady Shadowe here, and first and foremost, we would like to thank our sponsors for this episode. Thank you to Nadine Gordon-Taylor, intuitive artist, author, speaker, and teacher. She's also the visionary creator behind a series of soul-stirring oracle decks, including the Animal Love Oracle cards, the Heart Path Oracle, the Crystal Clear Oracle deck, and the highly anticipated Plant Spirits Oracle, arriving this fall of 2025. Her work blends mystical insight with artistic mastery, offering tools that inspire deep connection and inner wisdom. Explore Nadine's full collection at thethirdEyestudio.com or experience her magic in person at her beautiful Peekskill, New York storefront, The Third Eye Studio. To purchase her oracle decks, visit innertraditions.com. Thank you, Beans and Buttercream Bakery. Delicious homemade treats shipped anywhere. Call 417-973-2352. Also, Abernathy Photography, based in southwestern Kentucky, a professional and stellar company providing drone photography and destination weddings. Visit abernathyphotography.com. And author Mary Ray's self-reflection workbook on conquering shame and guilt. Tell the Devil to Go to Hell. Get it now on Amazon. All of our sponsors are linked up on our Facebook page. And now, back to our episode.
Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast. I'm Peaceful Nick, the medium. I am joined by Lady Shadowe. Tonight, we are going to be paranormally aroused.
In all of the best ways.
We are going to talk about our own personal experiences with the paranormal, types of paranormal activity, and what it all might mean.
And the science behind it, how we've applied our own experiences to science, which is going to be so exciting since we have a scientist like Nick here and an actual paranormal formal investigator like myself who's been doing this for years. So it's so cool what we're going to talk about tonight, everybody.
I'm going to tell some stories about my personal paranormal experiences growing up, and Lady Shadowe will do the same. And we will be joined by
Christopher Dufresne of Gold Hill Productions. Is our first guest on our podcast. He actually does several investigations in Virginia City, Nevada, where we were all raised. And he has a YouTube channel you can check out. He's totally legit. He does actual formal investigations on the regular, and we look forward to that later.
So I'm going to start with a story that was kind of crazy. I'm just going to say it. My mom was into the woo-woo, even though I was a super nerdy kid. And she read UFO books. She read all kinds of paranormal books. And we were watching, this was the late 70s, very early 80s. We were watching a show called Soap. And it was a show, kind of a satire in the evenings about soap operas. And in this particular episode, there was a demon-possessed baby. And we can talk about demons later, if anybody has any questions. And my mother was reading a UFO book. I was sitting next to her. My little sister was sitting next to me. And perpendicular to the couch was our love seat. And my sister and her boyfriend at the time were sitting there. All the lights were on in the living room. And our German Shepherd was sitting in front of a piece of furniture that had a drawer in it. And it was the late 70s, early 80s. So Furniture was actually made of wood that was heavy and not this other junk they make these days. And we're sitting there, and my mom's reading the book, and I'm just watching the show. All of a sudden, the top drawer of the piece of furniture comes shooting out across into the middle of the living room, over the dog, into the middle of the floor. All the lights were on, and everyone was just kind of stunned. And the boyfriend left, and we still are family friends with him to this day, and he still feels uncomfortable about that happening. And there was, no explanation for it. There was nobody else in the house that could have pulled a prank and pulled a string across, the dog just kind of lifted its head like, what in the heck was that? And everybody was just, jaws to the floor, like, what was that? And we just kind of left it at that. Looking back, I think it was probably some kind of telekinesis on my mom's part, but someone mentioned to me the other day that because I come from a traumatic background, that sometimes children have energy that causes those things to happen. And I had never heard of that. So if anybody knows anything about that, let me know, write me an email, comment below wherever you see this. And I would love to know more about that. But it was crazy. It was had to be some kind of telekinesis for sure.
Well, how heavy was the drawer? Was it was it inside of a runner and just yanked itself out of the runner? Or was it like a loosely kind of placed light wood type?
No, it was wood on wood. In the old days when the
Yes.
furniture was wood on wood.
Yep.
And
Okay.
it didn't just fall out over the dog, it shot over the dog about 6 feet into the middle of the room.
Yeah.
It didn't fall out, it shot across over the dog.
Yeah. Poltergeist activity, especially if something is happening randomly and an isolated incident like that, where it's just, like you said, a buildup of trauma or fear around you're being on eggshells and built up that energy as a child. Because if there's not a history of a haunting in a home, that's something that's not necessarily going to randomly happen unless there's a pattern of behavior. So it probably was an energy burst that was hanging out and wanted to get your attention due to just whatever attention was in the room.
Wow, that's a good perspective. I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, because Souls and Spirits is not just a place to learn about love-based Wicca over my website, but we've also done a ton of paranormal investigations. So Souls and Spirits kind of encompasses all of the, just as it says, the mind, body, soul, spirit from this world and beyond. We've done over 100 investigations since 2002, if not more. My husband and I were parts of many ghost groups at the time, and then we started our own, the Manhattan Paranormal Forum. So we have kind of seen a lot of different types of hauntings. And when they're isolated incidences like that, it's generally around a person, not necessarily like a separate entity that's like been living in the house forever and just decided to show itself randomly. It was probably, if you really think back to what was happening that day, or this, if you could tap into the state of mind that your mom was in when that happened, you might be able to really pinpoint, like if you could reach into her mind and read her thoughts, we might be able to pinpoint kind of where that was coming from.
It's interesting that you say that because, as I mentioned, she was reading a book about UFOs. I believe she was an untrained psychic.
Yep.
But she died in 1986, so I don't know. She did tell me on several occasions before she died that she experienced entities.
There you go.
And I did not understand exactly what it meant. I felt like it was some kind of evil spirit, but I was a kid. And again, why is she telling me this?
Right.
She was very open.
Well, that's a good segue to kind of identify the different types of hauntings that are out there, and like an entity versus a supposed demon versus bad energy versus walking into a pre-recorded situation that just loops itself, like in Gettysburg, where you're walking into a hospital scene that you're seeing that you are transported to 1860 and suddenly, whoa, where is my world? So yeah, there are different hauntings like that, according to many experts and according to my experience, and you've had a taste of that. So yeah, that's where science and the unseen and energy kind of all mixes into this different world of what we call the paranormal. Yeah. And so identifying, what those experiences were for someone and how they interacted with you can help pinpoint exactly the type of haunting it was or the interaction.
Speaking of science, I'm always on a quest to use science to prove mediumship is real, spiritual activity is real. All of these things, we have technology to prove certain things. There are things that we may not have the technology to prove. Like scientists still can't describe fully how quantum physics works. They
True.
don't, they can't understand why is it weird. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance and
Yep.
could never figure it out. So maybe our technology isn't there yet, or maybe we just need to have a little more belief in the preponderance of evidence of weird things happening.
Exactly. And there are several devices that detect paranormal activity now. My husband and I have used many of these devices in the past. Spirit box, the infrared, detecting electromagnetic energy when we go out to a spot, reading the spikes. When something feels off, the spikes go crazy. And I'm sure everybody listening has watched a ghost show or two on television because they're huge and there are so many and it's a fascinating subject. And so I would never condescend to think that our audience hasn't seen a lot of this already. But we are here to talk about our actual personal experiences. When these interactions go further than just watching or being a witness to flying drawers, right? That's one thing. But the most profound thing that's happened to me on an investigation is the smells. We've investigated Gettysburg at least, gosh, I would say at least probably 200 times. We've gone down there, we got married there. We hang out in Gettysburg all the time. It's just a 4-hour drive from where we live. And one particular night, we were at Sachs Bridge. I'm sure if you all know Gettysburg, you know where Sachs Bridge is. It's a very haunted place where they used to transport soldiers across from one end of town to the other. And there was a hospital built near there. And I was just standing there doing my usual, looking for EVPs. And this overpowering smell of cherry tobacco and sulfur were literally just hanging around me. Nobody else could smell it. Like I had Chris, I had a couple other investigators with me. No one else could smell this. But the scary thing, Nick, is when I breathed in, I could feel the burn in my throat. There was no source for this smoke. Okay. Or this sulfur, which was absolutely mind blowing. And I was just out of my mind trying to figure out why I was experiencing it and no one else could really smell it, but it was right there and it was real and there was no one smoking in our vicinity. We're out in the middle of nowhere, right? It was absolutely the most exciting, fascinating, and profound thing I've ever experienced in my hunts and my investigations. But you can put your input on that, whatever you think that might be.
I think that you were using your clairalience. So as a medium, we learn all of our clairs. Those are the senses we have in our daily life, but clairs means clear. You can see, feel, hear, taste, smell things that aren't there physically in the three-dimensional world. You had bleed over from another dimension, realm, a spirit who was just kind of hanging out and visiting, and maybe he smoked.
Yeah.
Maybe something was on fire because you said it was burning your throat.
Yep.
So one of the clairs, the clear smelling, is clairalience. And when you taste it, that's clairgustance. So taste and smell often, because our taste and smell in our human body is connected, it's the same with our clairs. Sometimes they come in together. So that is what you were experiencing. Now, I have a lot of people ask me about aliens and UFOs. And I have a couple of stories about that. Now, disclaimer, I have no proof that any of these stories I'm going to tell in the rest of the show were aliens from another planet. I am a scientist with an astronomy degree, a master's degree in astronomy. And so I have to realize I have a science brain and a paranormal brain, and I have to keep it in reality. I was in Daytona Beach in 1995 with my husband now. He was my fiance then. And I had never been to Daytona Beach. I had never been to Florida before. And we went and played putt-putt, and we, went to some terrible hotel because we were kids, we were 20 something years old. And I had a dream. I always call it a dream that three gray aliens picked me up by the bottom of, I was paralyzed and I could not wake up my fiance, now husband. I couldn't wake him up. He had sleep paralysis. And remember, I believe this was a dream, but I can't prove it at all. The thing that makes me question whether it was a dream is that it took place in the hotel room I was in. We don't normally dream that we're in our bedroom, right?
Yeah.
We don't, if we're laying on the couch and we're dreaming, we're not dreaming that we're on the couch,
Right.
in my opinion. Like, I don't dream about where I'm at. So that's what was weird to me. So I could feel and I could see that, typical gray alien you see on TV shows. I could feel their spiky fingers on my lower leg, picking me up, and I was levitating. It took them no effort to pick me up at all. Now, granted, I weighed a lot less when I was 24 years old than I do
We do not weight shame on this show.
We do
We do
not.
no body shaming on this show. We love every inch of ourselves.
This body has carried me through
That's
hell
right.
and back, and two babies with no epidural. That's a story for another.
Woo! Yes, another story.
Anyway, so I could feel their spiky little fingers for some reason lifting me up from the bottom of my legs. I guess because I could see them there in the dream. Aliens were lifting me up with no effort as if I was levitating, and then took me around the corner, levitating the whole way. Fiance could not wake up. I couldn't wake him up. I was moving my head to the side to yell at him and trying to move my arm to wake him up. He was paralyzed. I don't know if any sound was coming out of my mouth. I don't know if I was actually hitting him or not. I don't remember. And picked me up, carried me levitatingly into the bathroom. And the next thing I know, I woke up. But I could see their skin texture. I could see their eyes. I could feel their spiky fingers on the bottom of my legs. I could feel it now. It gives me chills just thinking about it. It was so real that, and I hadn't finished my bachelor's degree yet, so I didn't have all the science background that I have now, but I knew enough to know that alien abductions were a thing already by then. It was the
Yeah.
90s. I had read about it and seen it on TV. So you have to think scientifically, was I just dreaming? Probably. But also scientifically, I know that the universe is so big, and even a civilization 1,000 years older than us or 100 years older than us could have the technology to come here. So it is
Yeah.
scientifically impossible for aliens to visit. Do I think all the drones and UFOs out there are aliens? No, I don't. Do I think it's possible aliens have come here? Yes, I think it's a possibility. Was that an alien abduction? I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, I know what I saw one night was not in a dream because you were there. We were back in San Francisco. Let's go back to San Francisco again from our first podcast where we talked about our
Was this on
origin
34th
stories.
Avenue?
24th. Yes,
Okay.
24th off of Geary. Yes.
Okay.
And I had big bay windows.
Oh, in
and
your flat. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
flat.
yeah,
I decided to rent the living room as my bedroom in the flat because it had these beautiful bay windows. And I I'm a night owl,
I
so I
love
had
that
my
place. We
that
had
was an
some
awesome
fun
place.
times. We had some fun times over
We
there.
did, and our roommate was a wild man too.
And you know
Um,
what? I kept that alien painting for
yes,
25 years until it fell apart. He painted an
yes.
alien painting.
You painted an alien painting, and then I painted something later, making fun of the aliens. I did an alien head, and I gave him a milk mustache, and I wrote "Got milk." Remember that one?
Yes, I do. And
Yeah.
he
So
painted me that huge alien painting, and I had
yes,
it for years and years and years. I have dozens of
yes,
pictures of it because it was within my family for all those years.
yes. So he came. My roommate Keith, Nicole would come over and hang out. My roommate Keith would tell me, oh, I get abducted all the time. Full disclosure, they've even come here to San Francisco. I'm like, whatever. Okay.
Right?
Well, like
Skeptic.
I believed, but you know what I'm saying? Like thinking that they would come to a big city with all these witnesses and whatnot. Yeah, okay. But he was an interesting guy. He had a different look and vibe to him. So yes, I kind of I would put that together. Like I wasn't surprised, but as always, you want proof. You want to live through those experiences with somebody in order to validate them. So you came over one night and we had hung out and probably you enjoyed, I know, a little bit of toke, and fell asleep early in the corner of my room. And I had blackout windows in
It
my
was the 90s.
exactly. And still people use blackout windows even in the 90s and cannabis. Because I'm a night owl and I hate that sun coming in the morning. So I had this really, really heavy material covering almost every little corner of my windows. So I had those pulled down. You were sleeping, 2 a.m. It was not a dream. You know when you're sleeping and someone turns a light on, because the light's coming through your eyelids, right? So I'm sleeping and I see this bright, bright light come through my eyelids. And I'm like, oh my God, who's in my room? Like, you're over there. And I open my eyes and I see this bright, bright ass light coming through the little slits of the sides of the windows that aren't covered with the blackout curtains, which even in a sunrise would never come through like that. They were giant rays that lit up the entire room. And I said, oh my God, the lights. Holy crap, the lights. And I yelled to you and I said, Nicole, wake up. Do you see the lights? And then you're like, kind of mumbling at me. And then I did wake you up after they disappeared. So this was about maybe 6 seconds or so worth of bright light just totally permeating my room as if someone were using a Hollywood movie light to light up the entire set. It was crazy. And I sat up and I was so freaked out. I woke you up. You were like, "Oh, that's crazy. We'll talk about it more tomorrow." Okay. And then you went back to sleep. And then so the next day I was
Typical.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the next day I had talked to Keith. I ran into him in the kitchen. We were having cereal, and I was like, "Oh my God, by the way, something weird happened to me last night, and I don't know how to explain it." And he goes, "Oh, by the way, the aliens came to me last night." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's
Oh,
weird." And
wow.
I looked at the clock and I said, "What time was it?" He's like, "I don't know, like 2:15." And I said, "Holy crap," because it was like 2-ish when I noticed well, the lights woke me up. And if you all out there want proof of this story being documented, back in the 90s, I had this story published in Fate magazine. Um, I told it exactly how I remembered it just a couple years after it happened. And they've since republished a book called The Unexplained, The Best of Unexplained Mysteries or something like that. And Llewellyn published that. And I'm actually quoted in the intro of that book saying the lights of Los Angeles, California, because that's where I was living at the time. I moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles when that was published. But it was crazy. So it's been documented. It's actually published. The entire story is out there somewhere. And that was the wildest, only probably UFO slash what you would call a witness to an abduction that I've ever experienced. So it was very similar to yours, except that I was conscious and I was not sleeping. It woke me up. Like I saw what I saw,
I remember us talking about that, and with Keith, I remember that so clearly.
Yep.
I remember he saying it was like lights coming down, and I was like, what the hell is she talking about? I was asleep. I was
You were
asleep.
out.
I was comatose. But yeah, I remember that. It's so crazy after all these years how we have so many stories in common that we haven't talked about in years because life, right? It's been 35 years or so, and life and you forget, and then you remember these stories and it just brings back such great memories.
Oh, and it's because at the moment it's happening, it's all you talk about for like months. I'll give you one more story when you're ready of our most significant interaction with the paranormal, which is documented on the Souls and Spirits website. You want to go check it out. We have a page there where the Paranormal Forum resides. You will see the video there of Jeremy, which whenever you're ready, I can tell that
I
story.
want to tell my other UFO story real quick.
Yes,
I'll be
please
quick
do.
with it. I was in Missouri. This was the same year that I was in Florida in Daytona with the aliens on the legs. This was just a few months before that. Now, if any Missourians are in the audience, please email me. All my stuff's linked below. I have talked to other people in Missouri that have seen the same thing, and it was so incredible and shocking. I couldn't believe I was seeing it. And I was awake and I didn't have any of my special herbal medication that day.
All natural.
I was totally sober. It was 10 o'clock at night. I had driven up and down this road hundreds of times because I had lived in this part of Missouri and traveled through this part of Missouri my entire life for 20 something years. My fiance, husband now, was driving. Now I know the terrain because I've been there so many times. There was a valley. Behind the valley were a whole bunch of trees. For anybody that wants to know, this is between Ironton and Annapolis, Missouri. Okay, way down in the woods. So the trees are aligning the hill, and there's a valley full of grass. And I looked up to the right for some reason, and there was a giant yellowish orange sphere floating in the valley. And as soon as I looked at it, I made eye contact with it for about a second, and it took off immediately and went above the tree line as if it had no weight or gravitational pull to it at all. It had a little tail coming out of it. And for those of you who want to say it was a meteorite, it wasn't a freaking meteorite. I know what a meteor looks like. Okay, this was hovering. It was probably at least 50 feet across. And it was hovering, and it was maybe 100 yards from the road. So I could see it very clearly. It was 10 o'clock at night, so it was dark. And it was a bright yellowish orange light that was at least 50 feet across, hovering in the field. Meteorites don't hover. Okay. Could have been a military secret craft. I don't know. But I talked to some of my friends in Missouri after that, and they said, oh, we see those here all the time. And this is not far from Piedmont, Missouri, where there was a huge wave of UFOs. I don't know if it was the 60s or 70s. So, whatever it is, and there's several military bases not far from there, within a few hundred miles. So, whatever it is, I saw that with my own eyes, and I was terrified to go to sleep that night.
I would be too. I've had friends tell me about similar hoverings that just even in the middle of the day, they've seen things just hanging out like it's old hat, and then it just disappears after a few minutes. I've never had that kind of experience. Most of my, other than the lights, have been paranormal, ghostly. I think if you talk to anyone in the United States or in the world, they can tell you at least one or two stories like this that they've encountered that they cannot explain.
Yeah.
And of course, like you said, in the science realm, I'm sure that our creators can easily explain it. We just don't have the capacity to understand where that comes from. But my husband and I, we got married in Gettysburg because we have such an appreciation and a love and a reverence for the town. Much of it's preserved now because of the military park. I would say 60% of the town is pretty much battlefields that they're trying to preserve. So there can't be all of this development going on to preserve the history there. So we go there all the time to enjoy walking on the battlefields and investigating many different buildings there. And there's one particular bed and breakfast called the Farnsworth Inn. I'm sure if you have all heard of it, you know that it's super, super haunted. There are bullet holes in the side. There was a sharpshooter that killed Jenny Wade, which was the only civilian killed in the entire Gettysburg battle, from the window of this inn right straight into her house across the street and down, hit her in the back. It was very devastating for the town to have this happen. This is all historically documented. But in this inn as well was a family who lived in this home, and they had a boy named Jeremy, and he was killed at 6 years old, running in front of a carriage at the time, which was the main busy road through Gettysburg. And he is said to haunt the Farnsworth to this day. So my husband and I, we spent quite a bit of money to stay 2 nights at the inn to do an investigation. And nothing happened the entire night, believe it or not. We were up till about 2 a.m. watching, recording, infrareding, spirit boxing, all of the technology that they use today. We were using, kind of back then when it was brand new. And it wasn't until after breakfast that we had decided to go to the attic to have a tour of this little room with some old Civil War relics for a couple of minutes before we checked out. It was about 9:30. We started recording, and first we heard 5 little footsteps run in, toot, 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 toot. And we're like, we all got chills. We knew someone was in the room with us. We knew it was probably a child because they would, the footsteps felt small and close proximity to each other. And this video is going to be on our website, soulsandspirits.com. You can go check it out on the paranormal forum section of our website. And my husband, Chris, sat and talked with his spirit for about 15 minutes. And as he was asking questions, Jeremy answered with sounds like this: drawing and tapping, like he was playing with toys and drawing at the same time. It's absolutely fascinating. And while that's happening, we're videotaping an orb that is literally floating around and fluttering in front of the camera the entire time. And then, gets better, at the end of the session, you hear the 5 steps run out. And it was the most wonderful, exciting experience to contact that. And of course, that was a loving spirit. So we know that there are, and I have encountered, like I said, some annoyed spirits, nothing evil, but very annoyed, when we bring in Christopher Dufresne to talk about paranormal activity in Virginia City, one of the most haunted towns there are in probably the United States. He lives there, and he has started a new show that he uploads to YouTube, several episodes in. They are investigating the most haunted places in Virginia City, and he documents that kind of evidence as well. What, the things we all look for, sounds and orbs and flashes. So we're going to bring him in to talk about his investigations. He is my nephew. Indeed, we were raised in Virginia City and in the Virginia City Highlands in northern Nevada. And absolutely, there are so many stories there, so much history, so much death and tragedy with the mines and the and then the prostitution back in the day, and the alcoholism and the accidents that happened. I mean,
and the laudanum.
Yeah, it's crazy. So
if you don't know what that means, look it up.
Wait, can you spell it, son?
I can't spell it, but it's what the women used to take just to deal with life.
Yeah. But yeah, what a ride all of that was. That was our major life-turning experience that we couldn't believe happened in the middle of the day on a random 9:30 checkout. It was like Monday morning, and it was fantastic. But Nick, before we bring Christopher in, we want to talk about future guests. We have a very special guest coming on for the June 6th podcast. We are going to be interviewing Kamala Debbie McClure of Showtime's hit series Polyamory, Married and Dating, and she's also a best-selling author. And we're calling this episode Spiritually Naked, Sexy, and Sacred. It's going to be super hot. A little different from this episode and the last, but we're going to keep it real like we promised everybody. So if you want to tune in and hear some awesome, uninhibited, sexy talk, how to get in touch with your inner sexy and work those chakras, Kamala is very open, and she is fantastic and radiant, and you guys do not want to miss this show. She is pretty famous, and she has a lot of wonderful, beautiful things to say about loving your body and being in touch with your sexuality and all the things that both women and men and everybody in between want to talk about, but sometimes can't.
I think that I cannot wait for
I
that
bet you can't.
episode. It is going to be so incredible. I just can't wait. I have so many questions. I can't wait.
The show that she was on Showtime, I actually watched it. I became a huge fan, and I have been fangirling her since that show came out. I think it was 15 years ago, but she has done so many wonderful, spectacular documentaries and workshops and written books since then. And yeah, and it's no secret that you and I, Nick, are sexually active with our husbands, and we are pretty uninhibited. We can talk freely about this stuff. So if those of you who are a little more inhibited about talking about it, we can maybe hopefully open everybody up to be more open-minded and help you talk about these things easier. And Kamala is a wonderful person to do that with, because she is just so calm with her voice, and she's so relaxed and open and just 100% confident in everything she does, and all the complicated relationships that she brings into her life, which are actually magical, similar to me. And I will open up about that in the next episode as well, because I live a different type of lifestyle than most people as well. So we're going to have a wonderful podcast next week.
I am so excited and cannot wait. And the week after that, we have the Can astrologer. That her name is Abby, and she focuses on tarot, astrology, and plant medicine, and has been working in that field for a very, very long time. She's going to be talking about all things tarot and astrology. She has a course that she teaches that anyone can sign up for, and I'll have a code for everyone to use when they sign up. And I cannot wait. And the fact that she uses plant medicine as well, which is Mary Jane, for those of you who don't know,
Mary
marijuana.
Jane's, I mean, she's a really sweet girl.
And she uses that in her, health regimen, in her daily life to help her, connect with spirit. And we'll let her tell all about that. And, just as a disclaimer, some people can handle plant medicine and live a full productive life, and some people can't handle plant medicine. So if you're the second one, just stay away from it, because not doesn't work for everybody, especially nowadays. It's way, way different than it used to be in the 90s. So be careful out there, and it can be laced with stuff. So that's my mom brain telling everybody, just be careful and do your due diligence.
And now that it is legal, maybe just go to your local dispensary that where it must be certified and tested and all of that. Maybe a little safer to go to a dispensary than it is to get it off the street. So another health disclaimer there. But your friend also is an astrologer, which I can't wait to talk about that too, because I am loving all of the pieces of our paranormal world, whether it's
Yep.
the spirituality, the astrology, the science, or the ghosts and the UFOs and the sex experts. This is what this whole podcast is about, and we want to give you all the gamut of awesomeness.
Absolutely.
And yes, now we would like to welcome Christopher Dufresne of Gold Hill Films. He has been doing so much up there in the most haunted town of Virginia City, Nevada, which has gotten a lot of buzz lately, being featured on all these ghost shows for being such a hotbed for paranormal activity. And in full disclosure, Christopher Dufresne is my amazing fellow creative nephew. And we were raised in the Virginia City area, as mentioned earlier. And we are so excited that he is actually taking advantage of all the paranormal activity going on in Virginia City, because it really is a place that never sleeps, much like New York, but in a paranormal way, per se.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, 100%, Christopher. Thank you for coming on, and we're going to discuss so much. But I wanted to also tell our audience that you are a DJ and a music maker, and you and I are the creatives of the family. We're kind of like the black sheep, because we decided to do this full time with our lives. And so Chris and I have a bond that way, but he is doing extraordinary things. So tell us about your new show on YouTube, how many episodes you're in. So just give us your little bio.
Sure. Well, after I got my degree in film from UNLV, we had COVID, and so I moved back home. and couldn't really do much during that time. And so now that things have calmed down, I met a new friend named Dylan and was talking to him about just starting some YouTube, trying to get some buzz because we're also DJs and producers and putting on events in our local area. And our ghost hunting show kind of came about through that, and I can edit very well. And so once I showed him clips, he was all on board to invest in some equipment. And so we ordered our equipment, and it's kind of a funny story. The day it arrived, we wanted to use it, so we set it all up, and we were just at my house, and nothing was happening, surprisingly, being in Virginia City. And so we packed it all up, and we took a little trip over to the Gold Hill Cemetery, a little bit south of Virginia City, and we just went there to test the equipment, but we brought the cameras, and we actually caught evidence for the first time the first night that we were using the equipment. And so that became our first little edit. We weren't there for very long. So it's and we weren't planning on making it an episode. So it's actually called episode 0. And it's our first like attempt at ghost hunting together using the equipment at a place. And that's the first episode of our show, A Haunting the Evidence, on the Gold Hill Productions YouTube channel.
So definitely everyone go there. There'll be surprises later that we're going to talk about in a bit, because Christopher and I have caught everything from, shadows to orbs to mists to what's called EVPs. And can you explain to our audience what EVPs are, Christopher?
Yeah, EVPs are stand for electronic voice phenomena. And if you have an audio recorder, be it like a nice microphone or even your average phone, you could record voices that aren't embodied, so disembodied voices. The way it works is you simply hit record, and we usually try to do about a minute to 2 minutes per clip, and we ask about 3 to 4 questions, but we give space in between the questions we ask. And the reason we use it is because when you play it back, there could be other voices captured on that device that we didn't hear with our ears that we're able to save and listen back to later.
That's right. And also, what's interesting is if you just randomly record, these phones now have such sensitive recorders and microphones in them. If you're just talking with your family at a dinner table at Thanksgiving, I have actually caught things in a non-haunted situation. You'll hear something really weird that doesn't belong there, that doesn't belong to anyone's voice, that kind of just chimes in, and it wasn't even necessarily a ghost hunt. So what you're talking about is energy being imprinted that just decides to come in when it wants, whether you're kind of looking for it or not. And that's the cool thing about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. We always go into the investigations expecting, well, maybe something will happen, maybe nothing will happen. And then after you take the EVPs in the video and you watch through all the evidence, it's surprising how much you actually catch without even knowing it.
Right. And then basically, like Nick knows, if you ask, you receive. You just have to kind of reach into spirit, and they know when you're ready to contact them, and they are happy to answer you. And now Nick does this with her mind. She's a medium. So she kind of does not necessarily paranormal disembodied, but alive and well spirits on the other side. And Nick is a medium who deals in love. Can you talk to us about the most demonic or scary or evil or something that just put chills down your spine that you've caught? Because I know that I've caught some stuff similarly. And Nicole, tell us about why you don't believe that things can be so negative. And then maybe Chris, you and Christopher can go back and forth on what he's witnessed as well versus what you believe.
So, Chris, I am a medium, and in the thousands of readings I have done, I have only heard from spirits that are peaceful and loving and light. I have never heard from an evil spirit. I don't, even growing up Catholic, I'm a recovering Catholic, by the way. Even growing up Catholic, I never believed in hell or the devil or demons or any of that. It didn't make sense to me that that would exist. And so I've never experienced that. I would like to know what your opinion on evil spirits. Are they energy imprints? Or are they actually spirits that were humans that are evil? Do you believe in demons? What's the difference between ghosts and souls? I would love
So
to know
yeah,
all those answers.
That's a lot of
so
questions, Nick.
I'm not particularly religious in any way, but my friend co-host Dylan is very Christian, and so he does a prayer, and I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine. I respect that. But for me, with these investigations, I've found that going in with the right intention is everything. If you go in there wanting to communicate with something that you can't see, it's if they're like us, then they want to be treated with respect, and so we go in there with respect, and that's how we do our investigations.
I love that
Um,
you said, sorry to interrupt. I love that you said the intention and respect because that is something I teach my mediumship students and I talk about often. It's all about the intention. Why are you doing what you're doing and having respect for spirit or souls or ghosts in your case.
yeah, we did an investigation with a friend, and it was a new friend, and that new friend, we could tell that his intentions were to kind of provoke and just get things to happen. And all I can say is that a lot of negativity, a lot of EVP voices saying like F you and stuff were coming through. And then he was asking the spirits to like scratch him, and we had to sit him down and talk to him about how that's not how we do things.
Wow.
And all of the negative evidence that we caught was all toward him.
Do you
Wow.
have those recordings? That's crazy.
This is an episode that's coming out in the future, and I can't talk about it too much,
Okay.
but it's our episode that we've caught the most evidence ever.
Will it be on your YouTube channel, Gold Hill Productions USA?
Yeah, that's definitely where you could find it. Right now we have 3 episodes out. I talked about how we called the first one episode 0, because that's when we tested our equipment at the Gold Hill Cemetery. Our official first episode was scheduled, and so that one is Piper's Opera House.
Yeah, that place, I can attest. I did a show there and I have experienced stuff there. I know you have experienced a ton of stuff before, probably you were even documenting everything. But yeah, his episodes are going to be great. And the Silver Queen talked to us about the Silver Queen episode as well.
Yeah,
Which,
so the Silver Queen episode is our next episode dropping this week. So
woohoo.
be sure to check out our episode 3 coming out. And that's where I had my very first ghost or paranormal experience with LS. And we decided to investigate room 11 in the Silver Queen Hotel. And this was my first ghost hunt. And my uncle was sitting in the tub with his feet up, and I'm leaning on the tub. LS, she was in the on the bed, and I was leaning on the tub, and I know my uncle wasn't moving, and we asked Rosie, the spirit who's supposedly there, to give us a sign, and she made 3 loud knocks on the bottom of the tub, and I was leaning on the tub so I could feel the vibration of the knocks, and I could see my uncle, and he wasn't moving. So that was the very first paranormal experience I ever had.
My sister Marie, your mother, we've been all kind of seeing and hearing and experiencing these things in Virginia City for a long time. Marie's famous story, your mom's, was she was doing dishes right behind Main Street, and she was living in a small little cottage there, and looked up and saw a miner type guy, as clear as day, staring at her with these eyes, the details, but he was kind of sort of transparent, just standing on the roof, staring at her, and she looked down for a second, looked back up, and he was gone. So there was, I'm sure you've heard that story 1,000 times, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. But if you guys were still interested in the scariest moments
Yes,
that
please.
I've had, so during our Silver Queen investigation, the newest episode coming out, I was in the tub where Rosie, a lady of the night in the 1800s, decided to end her life. I was inside that tub, and they still have the tub there. And my friends are asking questions, and the shower head on the bottom of the tub moved and touched my heel. So that was probably the most physical jumping evidence I've ever had. Now, the second one, this number 2 scariest moment I had, I have to explain this investigation technique called the Estes method. Now, the Estes method is where you use this device called the spirit box, and the spirit box cycles through radio stations at a given rate. Sometimes you could pick up voices in between all the chops of it going through the stations, which shouldn't be there, especially if they correspond to questions being asked. Now, the Estes technique specifically is where you plug headphones into the spirit box. So one person has headphones and they can't hear the questions being asked. And the person with the headphones, their job is to call out any words that they hear. So the likelihood of those words that they're calling out randomly corresponding to somebody else asking questions, the odds of that are very low. But when you are able to carry a conversation for maybe 5 to 10 minutes and it's back and forth answering questions, then that's why we use the Estes technique. Now, knowing that, we decided to return to Piper's Opera House and another episode coming up. And it was just me and my co-host that got to do the entire place. And towards the end of our investigation, the scariest moment I've ever had was when we were doing the Estes underneath the stage where it's just bare ground. And it's just like pipes and whatnot. And I'm in the chair, I have the headphones on, and my friend is asking questions. Now he starts hearing movement and stuff around him, so he's trying to get our Estes method over with. And as he's getting up to lightly tap me on the shoulder, because I'm only paying attention to the headphones, as he's doing that, before he's able to tap my shoulder, I say, "Get back!" And then and it was very distorted, and it was nothing like I've ever heard in an Estes method. And then right before he taps me on the shoulder, I say, "Turn around." And then when he taps me on the shoulder, I get super jump scared. We have a video of this, and when that episode comes out, and you'll see my face, I'm like completely normal listening to the radio frequencies scan. But when you see my face get jumped because of how loud the get back was inside my headphones, and then as he's pulling me out of the Estes method, he decided that it was time to go. And so that was the last part of our investigation. And that episode will be coming out soon.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that. You can tell when someone's genuinely reacting to something that's totally unexpected and when it's, canned for some of these shows. But I have two quick experiences that I have to mention as well. I had two strange voices come through on an EVP when I was again at Saxbridge. We had just talked about that, the smells that I was getting out there, but on a separate investigation, similar to you, Chris, we were very loving with our intentions, asking very benign questions. And then we were just kind of talking in a circle about, oh, it's chilly. Oh, it's a beautiful night. And somebody came in and whispered, "Don't speak." Now that was none of us. Okay.
Wow.
And you just know, right? That, okay, we got something there and they're just listening. They didn't, whatever reason, they were a grumpy spirit. Now we didn't provoke that. And then there was another time we were on the bridge.
Wait, did you hear that playing it back or with your own ears?
Playing it back. Yeah, playing it back. We had to review that whole section.
You'd be surprised at how many voices you hear with your actual ears.
Yes.
And then don't get picked up too, is something I've learned doing
Absolutely.
this.
It could be the opposite. Yep, you can hear it with your own ears and then it doesn't get recorded 100%. And then there was another one, we were just the three of us on the bridge, and it was one of those creepy nights. Everything was super still. We heard what sounded like rocks being thrown into the water below us. And my friend had said, "You couldn't pay me to be in that water." A little bit of a profane comment that he made, but he said something like, "I'd rather get banged in the butt than be out in that water right now because this is creepy." And a voice came in and responded. It went, "Gross." I'm not kidding. I got so to your question, Nick, when you are talking to these spirits and you get a grumpy or you get an evil or you get whatever disembodied mood of these spirits you get, it's still legit. You're getting a live response from your energy and your words. So it might not just be one of those hauntings where Chris and I have experienced where you're walking into a scene that's a recording. This is a live interaction.
That's fascinating. I have not had any experiences with that. I did live in Savannah, Georgia for 15 years, and I know they It's a very haunted city, and I do go back there quite often. And I plan on doing some exploration in the near future. But there are some famous cemeteries there, and there's a lot of ghost tours and haunted stuff. So you guys should come down and do an investigation in Savannah, Georgia. We could do a whole
Hands down.
thing.
Well, we'd love to. We have our season one is planned to be all the locations that the other ghost hunters can't get to in Virginia City because we live here. We're able to go places that no other investigators have been before. That's our plan for season one. Season two coming out next year. We plan to leave our little town and go across the country to many places.
You got to go to Savannah, Georgia, and St. Augustine, Florida.
St. Augustine.
Both
I
of
have
those
some.
places, they're
Yes.
driving distance from each other, and they are incredible. Go to both of those for sure.
Yes. I have a picture of a St. Augustine spirit that was following us around in a blue mist. And you can check that out on soulsandspirits.com in the paranormal forum tab of our website. But Christopher, you have a couple of genuine EVP audio files that you want to share with us, under a minute long, kind of best that you've gotten. And is it okay if we play those now?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everyone take a good listen to this.
So that first EVP was repeated 3 times, and it's really hard to hear it unless you have headphones or you've got your volume turned way up in your car and not a lot of noise pollution. So you might want to listen to those again. We're going to play them now. Listen for the whisper that says, "Did you hear that?" In this next EVP, listen for a "ya" and a So that's how EVPs often show up, is through whispers or little words underneath other people's words. But it's pretty apparent at the time when they are actually recorded that the recorders recognize that it's none of their voices. So ghosts speaking or evil spirits?
I want to revisit evil spirits and what you think evil spirits are. Do you think evil spirits are real? Please tell me.
So my co-host, like I said, he's religious, so he is a definite believer in the demon aspect, and they are among I guess the spirits of the past. As far as my opinion, I think, like I said about the intention, I haven't had a really negative experience besides the one I had just mentioned when it said "get back," like, and it distorted the audio in the headphones. That's as close as I've come to something negative. But I assume that when we're speaking to these ghosts, these spirits, that they are like us and they've passed on, and maybe they have unfinished business, or we actually, during our investigations, if we're able to communicate back and forth, we try to get their story and details about what happened to them. As far as the negative, I think it's your mindset and how you approach the situation, and that will give you your outcome. So
I agree 100% with exactly what you said. It's your mindset. And I think a lot of people, disclaimer, I'm going to degrade religious organizations. A lot of people are brainwashed in religions. Remember, I grew up Catholic and worked in Catholic schools for 20 years. There's a lot of indoctrination because they want you to believe what they want you to believe. They want you to give them your paycheck every week, 10%,
yeah,
blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of evil and demon stuff talked about in churches. And so I agree with you that it's your mindset going in. And when I teach my mediumship, one of the first things I teach is you have to deal with your own trauma, whether that's emotional trauma from family stuff or religious trauma. Because if you don't deal with your stuff, you're going to bring it into your healing modality, whatever that is. And
yeah.
I am so grateful that you just said that statement, that it's
But
your mindset going in.
it's a good contrast because the way that I believe things, it doesn't really differ from what he believes. and he's all about the good intentions too. And he says his prayer for us before our investigation, and then he does another one in which to ask that the spirits do not follow us home. And so far, we've both been lucky enough that we do not have activity at our homes. The spirits have respected our wishes, and I appreciate what he does. Don't get me wrong, but it's just I can only take how like what I experience, and that's how I believe and that's how I react. In fact, before starting our ghost series, I was probably like 65% that there's some paranormal activity out there. And from doing these past investigations, I can say that you can communicate with spirits. So I'm like 100% believer now. And
Absolutely.
it totally changed my perspective, but it hasn't changed our intentions for everything we do or our attitude or how we approach our investigations.
I think prayer and intention are super important. I just think religions have bastardized belief. I'll just say that. And I love that you set a good intention and you have good intentions. That is so important.
Since there's no time, Nick, and we're all living amongst parallel universes,
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to run into other parts of other people, ourselves. And so, in general, if you just keep it, the like attracts like rule going there, that
Yes.
you're going to mirror your experience. And just like the human being emotions and how Chris was saying that they sometimes carry that over into the other side, when we're trying to connect, we kind of have to expect that we're not always going to get wine and roses, right?
Right. Right. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Because spirit can remember everything that happened as a human. My experience with mediumship is souls are positive, pure love, but they can relay all the human stuff that happened.
Yes.
Another thing I'd like to bring up to share with you guys is our second episode that we filmed was at my co-host Dylan's home, and his dad Mike, he's in a couple of our episodes. He was there and he explained to us how when he first moved into the house, he saw this beautiful woman, fully detailed, what she was wearing, her hair, her face, and he kind of jumped because he didn't know who that was, and then she just vanished in front of him. Our investigation at his house that she is peaceful and she just wants to be there and she likes being invited to speak. Otherwise, she likes to keep her distance from that first interaction that she had with Mike. We've
That's
figured
amazing.
out that her name is Elizabeth.
Oh, I love that.
Do you guys do research on who lived there before? Is that how you figured out her name, or you asked her?
So his dad had all the documents from who lived there in
Oh,
the past.
wow. Amazing. That's incredible. Chris, I am so grateful for you being here today.
Yes, you are
Absolutely.
such a well-spoken, young, educated man, and you've just been such a pleasure. Chris, I'm so proud of all the things that you're doing. You're doing everything right. Keep going. Also, for those of you interested, Chris makes really amazing music. Are you putting your music on the channel as well, or do you have a separate channel?
That's a separate channel. But I have songs under posted under the Gold Hill Productions, Gold Hill Productions USA on YouTube. We also have a Patreon, and if you guys would like to support that, be sure to visit us to see where we go next and where we're gonna go.
We will link all of your information in the show notes. So anybody interested in watching his videos or hearing Chris's music, it's all going to be linked below.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to seeing more of your guys' podcast out there. And I'm excited for the world to see our episodes coming out.
For sure. Thank you for your time. You were awesome. And everyone, make sure to go out and subscribe to Gold Hill Productions.
We may even have LS and Nick on a future episode as guest investigators.
Love that. I would love that.
I would love that too.
Nick is just starting out in her paranormal journeys, but I would love to rejoin you in the few that we've already done, Christopher, and that would be so much fun. Happy hunting to you, darling.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
thank
Chris.
you. Take care.
And another shout out to our sponsor of this episode, Nadine Gordon Taylor of thethirdEyestudio.com. Thank you so much for joining us this episode for the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Find us on our podcast Facebook page for Magical Mondays live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will help you magically slay your weekdays, and for awesome giveaways. For more information about what other spiritual things Nick and I do and offer, visit peacefulnickthemedium.com. That's Nick with just a K. Or to connect with me, Lady Shadowe, soulsandspirits.com is the place to go. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, we would absolutely love that. Contact us at soultwinstars@gmail.com. See you next Friday at 6 p.m. on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Facebook, and on YouTube. Sending you all so many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, know that you are all cherished.